So, think about it as providing food, providing heat, providing transport. Modern society is deeply integrated into energy, and the vast proportion of that is fossil fuels at the moment. So it's central to our quality of life. And what I did violently agree with the Mayor on is you cannot have a healthy environment without a healthy economy. And you can't have a healthy economy without a healthy environment. So you need these things to work in unison. The second one I would comment in is that despite, as Michael said, the advancement of all those alternate fuels, I've not seen a serious projection which doesn't have fossil fuels in there for the foreseeable future. And I put that out at least 50 years. My actual belief is that technology will enable us to continue to use fossil fuels as part of the mix until we exhaust fossil fuels, and hundreds of years out in that scenario. I did attend the Paris conference as one of the Canadian delegates. I do believe climate change is happening and that we need to deal with it. I do believe that CO2 is a significant contributor to it. So, I find those areas beyond the need for discussion. I think we are moving aggressively forward, particularly in Canada. New technology, some of the things we can do. Hopefully when we get into some questions, I'll maybe talk about how we've broken that issue of intellectual property around the environment in Canada, where we've pooled the intellectual knowledge and broken down the barriers, and we share it completely across industry in the public interest. And we've started to pull the international companies into that. So the big US companies are there, and the big European companies are there. But there are some myths. And one of them is that the sort of problem is over there, and politicians particularly get this piece conveniently wrong. It's not a problem of coal companies or oil companies or gas companies. It's a consumption problem. It's your problem. And the most difficult thing for politicians is that if they say that, they're not very popular. If they tell you they're going to tax you, it's not very popular. The answer to this dilemma, I absolutely agree on, is a broad-based carbon tax. And the theoretical end point of that is interesting. The most important point is you start and you progress, because there is an issue of disadvantaging economies, and you've got to be very careful. We can easily shut Canada down, but that would not be in the public interest or the environmental interest. And 80% of that CO2 is produced at the point that you consume products, not at the point that we make them. So it's a real politically inconvenient issue. On the policy side, and I'm sure Richard will say more later, I work, and the industry is working actively with the Eco-Fiscal Commission, which is effectively a think tank of economists and leaders who are trying to translate all of this into some sort of practical, pragmatic solution. It's advocating for policy change, and the conclusion from all of that work is the broad-based carbon tax is the most effective tool. And the second piece of advice is also completely consistent with what Michael is saying from that group, which is, to the extent you can, direct those funds, that carbon tax, to technology development, both in clean tech and some of it into the industries themselves, because the industry is going to be around for a long time. So let's make it the very best it can be in terms of the science. The last piece that the comment I want to make in this section, and then I'll wind up, is Alberta and Canada are now leading the world. So having attended previous climate change conferences, having attended the World Economic Forum for the last 6 or 7 years, Canada was the pariah in that group for a long while. We got clapped in to the Paris conference for the leadership position that Canada has taken, and that is the view of the world of Canada now in terms of positioning its oil and gas industry in particular in going forward.